Good evening, Iowa. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program, broadcasting to you live from the webcast1live.com studios in beautiful, frigid, well-preserved Des Moines. We want to welcome back, before we bring you the perspectives from that you love from the sides. Hey, we want to welcome back Ed Fallon to the area. I know that he was broadcasting right before us for he's been broadcasting this whole time, but he
for an hour live here.
He made it. He finally made it back home, and we sure do appreciate that he's home. But with me, as always, is my main man, Dr. Pat Petrosh. Doc, how is it going this evening?
You know what? Overall, things are going well, but I'm a little bit sad. Yeah. My dad, and his cousin Eddie and his cousin Kenny were raised as brothers because their fathers were off in World War II, fighting World War II against the Nazis. So who I refer to as my Uncle Eddie and my Uncle Kenny. Uncle Kenny passed this weekend, and that essentially leaves my poor dad alone. So I want to say out there, I love you, Dad. Oh, keep your chin up. Also want to say that, to Kenny's family, he was a great man, a tremendous hero to me, and provided a lot of insight into how life works. So I just want to say that a little bit. I want to get right to our guests after this.
We have guests today, and it's always
exciting. You sound surprised.
No, I'm not surprised. Right. I knew about it beforehand, but I'm always very pleased when you have guests
when they actually show up.
Exactly. So why don't we get right to it?
Well, absolutely. We have Nancy Augustine and Jeanne Munson, and they, if you recall, you were on before. I don't recall. Yes. Were you on before?
I haven't been on before. Right. No.
And as people know, I don't go and light the candles so that DHS can have more influence on my life. I'm kind of the anti-DHS guy. That's kind of strange being a psychiatrist. But these two ladies are working hard to get some of the Gestapo-like tactics that the DHS uses. They're working hard trying to get that reversed. So I'm gonna start with you, Jeanne. Why don't you tell us some of the things that have been going on legislatively and some of the things that you've been working on.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, why don't we talk a little bit and remind our listeners about how Jeanne came to the show, and Nancy, a little bit about your background and what you guys have been up to. Jeanne, especially Jeanne, since the last time we had John, I think that was probably last fall, about a year. Right? About maybe 9 months to a year?
At least a year, yeah.
And we certainly do appreciate you remembering us, coming back, reaching out to the show. You've been in good contact with us over the internet, pointing things out, and we've exchanged a couple of emails back and forth, I know, between then now. So Nancy is the newcomer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be sitting in the webcast1live.com studios this evening?
This is a privilege to be here.
Oh, my gosh.
You should have just read the whole show.
Out of all of the adjectives that I would have described about being on our show this evening, privilege was not one of them. And I had a couple of choice ones that I would have lent to you. But so tell us a little bit.
Okay.
But go on. Don't let me keep you from flattering us.
Okay. I'll try not to be too complimentary.
Fantastic. We're used to that. Go ahead.
My son and his wife got involved in a DHS case.
Mm-hmm.
And they were fortunate, and their children remained with them.
Mm-hmm.
But over the period of 2 years, it was a living hell. And I was involved with it as well, and went to every court hearing and everything to do with it, the whole procedure. And it's a total destructive system, even if you do come out with your kids and they're not put in foster care or put out for adoption. So even if you come out okay, you're still destroyed. Psychologically, financially, the relationships with the family members will never be the same. And so during the process, I sought out to educate myself on what was going on, because I couldn't believe the legal procedures, and they can't do this, can they? So I got on Facebook and was lucky enough to find Jeannie's Facebook page, Protest Iowa DHS.
Mm-hmm.
So got to talking with many other people that were in the same situation, and we've remained close on that, and we decided that legislation is the way to make some changes.
Well, when I talk to the folks that run in Jeannie's, sorry, and I don't want to put the whole thing on you, Jeanne, because I know that Protest Iowa DHS is more than just you. It's more than just a couple of people. It's a fairly widespread, statewide group of folks that get together and talk about some of these problems that they've had with the department. In the interest of full disclosure, our listeners know this about me, but to kind of facilitate this conversation, I am a lawyer practicing here in Des Moines and some of the rural counties, and I do a lot of juvenile cases. In fact, I had my second pretrial in the last week. I had one on Thursday last week and one today of new juvenile appointments, and so get to start the whole thing over again. I've done termination trials. I've done permanency hearings that go my client's way. I've been able to be effective. I represent primarily parents, not as many kids. And so I feel fairly familiar with the system. But Jeannie, why don't you remind our listeners as to how you got to the point that you're at, and then we'll take probably a quick break. So maybe a minute, and then we'll take a quick break and then get back on Pat's question about some of the specifics in the legislation that we're working on here.
Okay, well, I lost my grandkids after I'd had them for 14 months, and then DHS come in and took them, split them apart, and adopted them out. And after that, I was like, what can I do to fight these issues? Mm-hmm. I was so downhearted about everything. And that's when I created Protest Iowa DHS, because I created it because we were going to have a protest. And I thought that would be the best way to get to all these people. Well, it ended up, Protest Iowa DHS has grown like crazy. We've got like 726 people on there now. And I'm getting probably 3 to 5 requests a week for people to join this site. And now it's mainly information. Mm-hmm. So I can't get rid of it or rename it because it's taken on a life of its own right now. So, it has, yes. So, Pat, I know that we got to throw to a break, but I know we got some sponsors out there, too, that need a little bit of love.
Oh, you bet. We want to thank everybody who's tuning in tonight. We know what kind of time commitment it takes to become a Doc and Lefty listener. So we want to thank everybody for doing that. We also want to thank our sponsors. That would be Lubinas Law Firm, Bertrosian Associates, Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia at 515-574-6442. Please follow us at docandlefty.com, facebook.com, and Twitter. We'll be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Bertrosian Associates, how can I help you?
Bertrosian Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have a couple of guests in the studio with us, which is always a treat for Doc and I. We love having them, Nancy Augustine and Jeanne Munson.
You bet. Now, I want to say one thing real quick here. Ed Fallon just got done with his march across Iowa or the United States for climate change march, 3,000 miles, right, left, in the middle. That's a heck of an accomplishment. He got everything done. That's a man that gets something done. Now, just to make sure I keep the people on the ride happy, I've been burning tires and running my truck extra just to make up for all that walking he did.
Yep.
So don't worry about it.
It's kind of like how my vote canceled out your vote in the election this past.
Well, yeah, but at least this way is, you know. Anyway, Ed's standing right back there. He's just looking in there.
You can hurt the environment. That's and we know that conservative.
Here, come in here and give that face to the camera. That's a heck of a face right there. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, have a good night.
All right.
So back to
I know
Jeannie
that
and Nancy.
I know that you definitely wanted to talk to them when you heard that they were available and wanted to come on the show. I know that you had a couple of questions you wanted to talk about their legislative proposals, Pat.
That's right. Now, I'm not quite sure. I tried to follow what's going on with DHS because it does impact me and my profession quite a bit. So I'd like to open it up to you because you guys know much more than I would. What has gone on that's going to help keep DHS from becoming even more Gestapo-like in the future?
Okay, well, we have a whole list of changes we want made. And we've been to the State House twice. We went Saturday and we went again yesterday. And, of course, we're going to narrow this down to 3 or 4 for this year. And
right. What are those for this year?
Well, one of them is the guardianship versus China.
Okay.
We actually got that through last year.
All right.
But the way it was written, it's not any different than what it already is now.
Right, and that we had talked about that actually when you sent me the legislation. That was the last thing that you and I talked about. You sent me the legislation, I think, Jeannie, that was in the code, and I think that the change you guys had wanted to make was to set up guardianship. And I'm just going to rip through it, but we can explain some of this if we need to set up a guardian where judges have the power to order a guardianship at disposition rather than a permanency. I think is earlier in the process, and like you said, that was already a feature of 232 well before you guys came along. So what were the specific tweaks that you wanted to make to that statute?
Well, the tweak that we want to make is that they have to offer guardianship before the China, because not only will that save a lot of children from being torn away from their families, but it'll save the taxpayers a lot of money too, because it'll keep people and kids out of court.
So you want to, just so I'm understanding you correctly, you want the statute, I suppose 232, 102, or I guess 94, whichever the subsection the actual China statute is. Do you want that amended to have this, or do you want to create a new code section that says judges don't have discretion, that they have to offer, or that they have to set up a guardianship? Or
yeah,
okay.
They wrote it out last year and passed it, but it just wasn't enough. So DHS decided that they were not going to offer guardianships, and so we want it forced. That the judge, the DHS have to make the offer of guardianship to family members or someone else that's available and willing to take the child would be a good fit.
So just to kind of to explain a little bit more on this topic. So when a DHS case opens up, and let's say it's where removal is going to happen, because not these two cases that I'm working on right now that I just got appointed on, the children haven't been removed yet, and hopefully they never will.
Right.
And those are always the best case scenario. And obviously, you can still go through the process. You can still lose your kids even if they don't remove them prior to adjudication. But typically they come in and they have the parents sign a consent, or they'll just take them and have a judge confirm it after a hearing where there's a removal. But those removals are based usually on child protective assessments and investigators that come out and, hey, is the house too dirty for kids? Or is drug use, abuse, all that kind of other stuff. So when do you want the guardianship to be set up? Do you want it set up during that investigation process, after the investigation, before removal? Like, what's your timeline? If
DHS is talking about a China, then that's the time to do it right then, before they do the China. Before adjudication. So, yes. So after a removal,
and so what happens in cases where there is no, because the DHS has stated policy, and this is what every worker will say, and this is what the department will say, is that they prefer to leave kids with family members. And also by law they are required to do a social history where they can identify all family members within a certain degree of consanguinity, blood relation, and figure out the best family member in that group of people. What happens in this scenario about offering guardianship if the parents are just on their own, grandma and grandpa aren't around, or have no relationship, or inappropriate, and foster care is the only option? Does this code section still apply?
Well, no, it probably wouldn't. If you don't have somebody to take a guardianship, it couldn't apply.
So no, I'm going to interject something right here. There was an article last week that came out one of the magazines that I read to keep up with, psychiatric stuff. And they did this very interesting study involving 1,200 children, and 600 were placed in foster care, and 600 had remained with the abusive parents at home. And it turns out that according to this study, it's better to have the children remain in the home, even if the parents are abusive. And I think if they replicate that study, that's really going to impact a lot of the thinking that's going into the DHS process. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and that's interesting to me because obviously your gut says that's an awful idea, right? But without
it's a system they know.
That's just
it's a system they know.
Well, and so my point is not to argue. I wasn't going to argue with you. I was just going to say, but we don't have any evidence right here in front of us.
No, we don't. I was just throwing that out there.
So
we're going to be back right after this break. We're going to be back with Nancy and Jeanne, talk a little bit more about the DHS. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Take it away, Maddie.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. I know that, Pat, you had a question or two about... Well, actually, Let's get back. So we talked about the guardianship piece of the legislation. What was another thing that you guys wanted to talk about, like one of the other specific projects? Nancy, did you have some thoughts about that?
We do have one, social worker immunity.
Social worker immunity, what's that?
That is, they are immune from prosecution, and they have abused that right or privilege or whatever you want to call it, and they can pretty much do whatever they want.
Civil, criminal, what kind of liability are they immune from?
As far as I know, everything, unless it would be a criminal offense.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else.
Well, because they're not like ambassadors. They couldn't run you down with their car and get away with it, right?
Oh yeah, they probably
They've
could.
actually attempted to do that to a grandmother. A social worker has been harassing a grandmother over in Clinton, and she has literally tried to run down that woman. It's unbelievable.
And that sounds like attempted murder, Nancy. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not. I don't know if the grandmother would call it that, but we're calling it severe harassment.
Sure.
And she also threatens to, every time the grandmother doesn't do something she wants, she threatens to remove the children. Mm-hmm. It's just a total abuse of power. And I think that too much power has been given to people that don't have the proper training or temperament. And so that needs to be pulled in a bit.
And that's something that you've mentioned several times
all the
before.
time. And there needs to be a lot less Indians, a lot more workers over there. That's one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the goals that you guys have established for yourself this year that you think that you can meet? Because everybody has goals that are really lofty, but in this case, what are some of the goals you guys think you can accomplish in this next legislative session?
Well, we have three. The immunity, the guardianship, and then we would like to try open records, but that one's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough battle.
Yeah, because you're exposing children's records.
But honestly, though, what are we exposing? What we really would be exposing is the social workers and their records and what they're doing, because they're hiding behind those records right now.
I guess. I mean, I personally would have a problem with that. And I'm no lover of DHS, and I've certainly had my fights with workers. In fact, I'm going to have a pretty serious one here in a couple of weeks that I won't get into because it's a long story that'll just make me mad. But boy, I mean, I've read these CPAs, and I know one of the cases that I worked on that I withdrew because I couldn't get along with my client just really graphic, horrific allegations and a sexual abuse situation that really I don't know that serves the public at all.
And from a psychiatric viewpoint, if there is a way that you could just expose, the worker and what they're doing and leave the child out of it. But the problem is as you said, the CPAs are written in such a way that it's all blended together. Now, who has been your champion so far? Last legislative session and this legislative session, who's taken up your call?
Dave Dawson, who's a representative from Sioux City, is an attorney, and he's like you. He's served all the different positions, including county prosecution. So he's a big believer in improving the DHS system, and he really believes that opening up records would solve a lot of problems because it's not just the social workers, it's the court procedures, it's the GALs, it's witnesses that are allowed that are being denied by the judges. So it's kind of opening up the whole due process, and that's actually what we want opened up, the due process. We want eyes to see that people are getting fair treatment when they go through their hearings.
Well, and Doc, there are ways that you can seal exhibits and have court orders being public and that sort of thing. There are ways to do it, but not good. They're not. I personally, I mean, and we don't. I don't think it's a big deal. It's just I have a difficulty with it.
So these people are going to support this again this year.
Well, yes, Dave is someone that really has a heart for children and human beings. Is Janet Peterson, Senator Janet Peterson.
I think she's the one that co-sponsored the last one, right? Am I correct on that?
Well, when the guardianship was moved up earlier in the process, yes. And from Ames area, Beth Wessel, Chriselle. And, of course, we have Linda Miller, who's the, House of Representatives chair for Human Resources. And Dave Heaton, he's a big promoter of, has his eye on DHS. We've talked to a ton of people, and it's like everybody's nodding, yeah, but nobody really knows what to do. So we figure the best way to eat an elephant is a bite at a time. Just start out with something and, just get started. So
when do you think some of these bills are going to be brought up this year? Do you think it's going to be this year in the first half of the legislative session, or do you think it's going to be next year?
Well, someone advised us the sooner the better. Also, Chip Baltimore, who's with Judiciary.
Yep.
And we've got quite a few of the local Des Moines reps and senators that we've all talked to.
Any correspondence with the governor's office? Branstad just is coming back into power with a pretty huge mandate. Maybe he could use some as political capital for your initiatives.
Well, the funny thing about our initiatives, they don't cost a penny. We're talking about having state agencies, bureaucracies, do their job honestly and quit destroying the people, but strengthen the families is what their job is. Keep kids safe and strengthen families.
Plus, they could save the taxpayers some money by doing this too.
Exactly, or reallocate it to be more where it needs to be.
Well, and one of the things I've always thought about is they give adoption subsidies. A lot of times, what happens is child's removed from one home, given to a foster family, rights are terminated, that foster family adopts them, and there's these giant adoption subsidies. And one of the problems with that particular thing, from my viewpoint, why don't you give those adoption subsidies to the family before so they can get the services needed? Because most of the time, and I'm not trying to sound classist, but most of the time, these people do not have the financial resources to get the help they need.
I was gonna
go ahead.
I was gonna completely agree with that. I've got a client who I represent a lot of dads, and dads at the same time have the easiest role in this and also the most difficult, because if the dad doesn't want to be involved, he almost never has to be. Doesn't have to show up to court, doesn't have to do anything as long as he's signing that paycheck. And that's the one thing. Well, and this is what's screwy about the whole system is that the Court of Appeals has ruled that judges in termination proceedings are not supposed to give consideration to the fact that a termination will cut off a revenue stream vis-a-vis child support because that adoption subsidy is available. Well, that is the main reason not to terminate on a dad who wants to sign the paycheck but doesn't want to have much to do with the kid. As long as the kid is safe, sign that paycheck. But we're going to terminate on these guys. And on the other hand, they have the hardest job because they're always plan B. Always. If mom gets her act together, dad spends all kinds of money and all kinds of time doing something that's not going to get his kids back. And so a reform in the judicial system, I think it wouldn't be amiss either in rethinking and reinterpreting some of these statutes because Pat's right. The idea of this adoption subsidy coming in after the root has already been cut from the tree, but then at the same time saying during the process, well, we can't pay for your mental health treatment, although we want you to go get it, and if you don't get it, we'll use that against you in a termination case, is ridiculous to me. It's absolutely ridiculous to me.
Backwards. Everything is backwards, actually. and I'm not, and I know that you guys and will disagree about this. I just want to go on the record as saying that I don't believe personally, and I don't think there's been any evidence to prove otherwise, that the adoption subsidy somehow gets that someone's wetting their beak in DHS. That theory has been floated before. I've come across it before. I don't know if either of you guys have espoused it, but that the reason that termination has been preferred is because something with the federal adoption subsidy that flows to these foster parents that adopt these kids, because grandparents that adopt get it too. What I can tell you, and I don't think there's any evidence of that, and what I can tell you is that the reason that termination is preferred in this state is because of a couple of court cases from the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court that have said the best interest of the child in true permanency is termination and adoption. I personally disagree with that Supreme Court decision, though, that line of cases that come out with that decision. I think that the justices could revisit that
Absolutely.
That line of cases, but I think there were...
Well, we want to thank Jeannie and Nancy.
I want to respond to my last comment before we get to our sponsors. I don't know if you guys wanted to respond to the last thing that I said here before.
We're a little bit behind here.
Okay.
So we want to thank Nancy and Jeannie for coming in tonight. Really appreciate it. Tell us how to get a hold of you guys if anybody has any questions or concerns.
They can get on Facebook at Protest Iowa DHS.
Okay, great.
That's the easiest way.
No numbers or anything like that.
Yeah, I can give you a phone number.
All right. What's that phone number?
515-333-2204.
All right. Thanks, ladies, for coming on. Coming up with this next segment, we're going to start talking about the Keystone Pipeline, and it kind of the sudden about face that Harry Reid had for bringing that up to vote. We'll be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to our guests, Jeannie Munson and Nancy Augustine. Been a long weekend. See you back here in a minute.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. We sure want to thank our guests from the previous segment, Nancy Augustine and Jeannie Munson, for coming on again. Jeannie Munson, officially a friend of the show.
Yes, she is.
Her second
Second
visit.
appearance. We need to do something like these really cool bottle caps.
Yeah, what's that bottle cap?
Well, I've been telling people, my nephew's been coming over and because he's in medical school here in town, and blow off some steam. We spend a couple hours brewing some beer. Now, here's what the problem is: he doesn't drink that much. I hardly drink anything, so we have I think we have close to 200 bottles of beer at this point.
Are you serious?
I kid you not. Come on over.
You're brewing beer at your house, and you didn't think that you would invite your functional alcoholic lawyer friend over to drink with you?
Well, I didn't want to add to the problem.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. I shouldn't be joking about that.
Well, but here in a couple weeks after Thanksgiving, I'm going to invite my boss at Youth Homes over, and we're going to have a beer and brisket night. And so since he's a connoisseur, and then there's a guy that used to work there, he brews his own beer. Anyway, maybe we could do something like this, because this is what I got for our thing. It's for Bertroche and Bertroche Brewery. So I thought that's one. And
B flat, because that's
B flat. There. Oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Here's the other one. That one's pretty. I don't know how close I can get it, but it's B&B.
Yep, that looks pretty good. So anyway, I got to say.
So what do you think? Now
the last I had heard about the Keystone, because we want to talk about that, right?
Yeah, let me set it up just a bit.
Yeah.
Now, every Democrat that I ever knew and every liberal I've ever talked to says, "Oh, Keystone's a terrible idea. We shouldn't be doing, getting the shale oil and the Bakken sand oil and everything else."
Unless you're the president and the State Department, who both said Keystone was just fine. But go ahead.
Well, but no, because
recently, the environmental surveys that the State Department did.
Hang on, let me set it up. Set it up. I let you set it up.
You did.
Man,
I apologize.
It's role reversal every time. So here's Obama going, no, we're not going to do it, even though it had some support, and he backed off several times. Harry Reid won't bring it up to any kind of vote, even though it was passed by the House fairly with a significant margin. And that's not to say specifically he wasn't going to pass this one, because he hasn't brought to term nearly 400 bills anyway that were even bipartisan. So turns out after the shellacking that the Democrats took at this election, by the way, a great block. And
you like that?
Well, I figured I'd better stroke your ego, because otherwise we might not get another one for 6 months.
Did she tell you that I said that? No, that will take that off the air.
Yeah. So here it is, Mary Landrieu, who is in the fight of her life down there. And she's supposed to be the final vote for Obamacare, which is not very popular in Louisiana. She really has said, I really don't support Keystone Pipeline all that much. And then suddenly the tides turn. She's in their fight for her political life down there. And just as soon as they got back in session, suddenly Harry Reid said, well, let's bring Keystone up for a vote. And Mary Landrieu, who has talked sporadically throughout the campaign but has not made it one of her key cornerstones, suddenly says, I'm all for Keystone. Keystone Light, Keystone Heavy, Keystone. And then it just went down in defeat. So my question to you, Blake.
Right.
Is the Democratic Party just as bought by big oil as everybody else? Or are they really just trying to save her seat?
Ugh. A seat that she's going to lose anyway.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Are you... I mean, what? I
don't
think
they're in a runoff down there.
Well, they're absolutely in a runoff, but I don't think she won the first round, did she?
Well, no. This is the votes were so close.
No, I know that, but I think he beat her in the first vote, didn't he?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Well, we can check that out.
But the vote to the final determination of vote is coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Right, but there's all the polling suggests she's going to lose that seat.
Yeah. So do you think this is a move by Harry Reid to try to save a fellow Democratic senator, or do you think this was a real change of heart by everybody?
Well, of course it wasn't a real change of heart. I think that you and I are both too cynical to really think that that's the case. This is kind of what Democrats do, right? They lose they lose a couple of elections. They lose control of the Senate for the first time in a little while. Well, it was, historically not too long. And then start just passing things that are never going to get them political benefit whatsoever. The Republicans are never going to work with the Democrats. That's not going to happen. And in fact, if you're still hearing these calls for repealing Obamacare, impeaching the president from all manner of folks, and it's been stirred up this time. The first impeachment, by the way, just to get off track a little bit.
No. Let's just stay on Keystone. We only got 2 minutes.
Was stirred up by the Democrats. This time it's been stirred up by Fox News. So it's more of a real thing. The Republicans are never going to come around and work with the Democrats at all, because their mandate, as they see it, their non-existent mandate as they see it, is to not let Obama do anything. And so they're going to force him into a put up or shut up kind of veto vote.
Well, but this wasn't brought to the table by Republicans. It was brought to the table by Democrats.
Because the Democrats think that by doing this, they'll get a little goodwill from Mitch McConnell when the session flips over in January.
You really think that?
I do think that.
Man,
Democrats are
idiots. You and I agree there, but we disagree on. I think this is just trying to save a Democratic seat, because if there is one more seat that goes Republican, that's not too far from a supermajority. I mean,
they only have 53, 54?
Yeah, but if you get to 55 votes, suddenly all you need is 5 Democrats from the other side.
Well, that's not going to happen either, though.
Well, it's a lot more likely than trying to get 8 or 10.
Well, it makes
it. I just think it's a cynical move. Well,
of course, I agree with you. Getting to the brass tacks of your actual question, of course, everybody up there is bought by everybody. I think
not bought by us.
Well, we couldn't afford it.
But we could be bought.
We could.
Yes.
That's true. I just think that this is a cynical political ploy to garner some red state support that's never going to come, and the Democrats are giving up one of their fairly potent political issues, although it seems to have wide public support through the country, to capitulate on something that they probably don't need to capitulate, and they're hanging their president out to dry while they do it.
Which I think is funny. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back. We're going to talk a little bit about hanging the president out to dry. We're going to talk about, how the Democrats could not run far enough from President Obama in this last election. And before I forget, we have a new listener tonight, Joy Hansen. She's been chatting with us, but, I'm getting old and I can't remember my password to chat. So DJ Matty G is trying to work that out for us. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back right after this break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you neat old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to finish up here on Keystone here in this next segment.
Well, first of all, we have a question from our new chat listener.
Oh, you got in there.
Yes. Let me put my glasses on so I can see the screen. If there are horseshoes, why aren't there horse shocks?
Oh, for crying out loud.
Well, that's their question. Do you know why?
I have no idea.
They do have socks, right? They do have socks. Horses have socks. If you go out to races, you'll see horses in their horse socks.
Oh, sure.
There you go.
Fair enough.
Joy.
I'm glad that, we have a comedy podcast that's going to be coming out in 2015 that would be perfect for.
That's great. That's great. So,
okay.
Anyway, back to Keystone. The main issue for environmentalists, from what I see, and of course, I wish Ed was here now to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Bakken sands and the way they extract the sand from the oil from the sand up in Canada. Now, I think we ought to drill here, drill now. I think we ought to be as energy independent as we can be. Having said that, I'm also a fairly, if you want to call it liberal, I'm a fairly liberal conservative when it comes to environmental processes. Because George Carlin once says, the earth doesn't give a crap what we do to it because all we're doing is killing us, right? I don't want to drink water with oil in it.
Right.
And I don't want to drink, hog confinement stuff.
Yep.
So I'm really fairly liberal when it comes to this, if you want to talk about
You're
it.
a Nixonian Republican when it comes to the environment.
Well, yes. And to watch the devastation of these Bakken sands is incredible. The other issue that a lot of other people have is none of this oil is coming here.
Yep.
None of it. They're going to build a pipeline right through the middle of America from the Bakken sands down to, I can't remember the refineries in Louisiana, which is where I think
it's going to Gulf of Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's going to the Gulf, but part of it is going to go to Texas, part of it's going to go to Louisiana. As I know the how it's laid out. Here's what the issue is. One, the proposed pipeline goes through Indian territory, right? And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it goes through Indian territory. The Rosebuds are all up in arms. Now, the reason I knew this from a while ago is because I used to be a physician up there, so I know a lot of people. And if you look at South Dakota, you're going to have to skip South Dakota in order to avoid the Indian
Montana, Wyoming, yeah.
So I don't know how they're going to get it through there. And the second thing is, oil leaks and the rest of that's going to be a problem. Really, the oil leak problem isn't my concern. They have really come a long ways with technology and monitoring and all that.
As long as it's not in the water.
Yes, but the Bakkens and shale oil, all that is really dirty. It takes billions of gallons of water just to be able to clean one barrel of oil. And what do you do with that wastewater? You can't reuse it, and you really can't reclaim it.
Yep.
It just goes to these giant ponds, and then birds land in it. And now I know everybody out there should know oil and birds don't go well together. So that's really the issue.
They actually go too well together.
They go too well.
It's impossible to separate them once they get together.
Yes, absolutely. So that seems to be the problem. Now, on the other side, do you want to take the Republican side on this?
Well, what the Republican side is that there've been environmental impact studies that have been done by various government independent agencies in the states, in the United States. If Canada's already proved this thing. We can't do much about that have come back as environmentally neutral. I personally don't know how that could possibly be true, because everything that you do, even if it's rebuilding some infrastructure, has an environmental cost. There are ways to offset that, but they also are pitching this as a jobs program. That if we really want to create some good paying jobs, we need to approve this pipeline. We should have done it a few years ago. I mean, what the last estimate? 50 permanent jobs, 100 permanent jobs. You hire guys to build this thing.
But that's not the Republican side. That's the Democratic side.
Well,
Republican side is there's going to be thousands of jobs.
Well, no. While they're building it.
While they're building it. Well, as we all know, infrastructure doesn't create permanent jobs. It just doesn't.
It doesn't.
So what you're doing is creating infrastructure and then maybe 50 jobs at the end. Now, I don't know. I'm not an oil refiner, right? But from what I know, there's at least 500 jobs that per refinery that could be created with this oil. But the problem is they're not going to be refining a lot of it here.
Nope.
They're going to be
putting it on boats.
Putting it on boats.
Sending it to China.
And that's what they're doing.
So it sounds to me like... Go ahead.
Go ahead. So one of us has to talk.
Oh.
So it sounds to me like, we're doing this for China. The very same people that when President Obama was in China, they said, "Hey, look at the technology we stole. We now have a stealth fighter too." Those are the same people we're doing this for.
Well, we're gonna sell oil to China to make it easier for them to hit their air quality goal or their emissions goal by 2030 or whatever the deal was they struck with the president.
Oh yeah, something goofy like that.
It's just ridiculous.
And it doesn't help. It doesn't help Americans. It doesn't help Americans. It helps Canadians, which I'm all for. But it also helps
we like Canada on the show.
Yeah, we like Canadians. But I'm not a big fan of the Chinese, especially when they steal stuff from us and capture our planes and do all this other stuff.
So it sounds like you're not a big fan of the Keystone XL oil pipeline.
If I ever run for Congress again, it's going to hang me. But no, I'm not. Now, if Canada said, you know what, we're willing to sell all this oil to you, terrific. We'll build a refinery right up there in Canada, and we'll pipe it right to where we need it. I'm all for that. But this does not help our energy independence. This pipeline does not. And, boy, I always hate agreeing with Obama or any lefty. But I don't think Obama's saying no to it because of the same reason I am. But it doesn't help us. And it has a tendency to, help the Chinese. We don't need to help the Chinese.
Does it frustrate you at all? Because it frustrates me a little bit that whenever something comes up for a debate anymore, and a piece of that debate has to do with environmental concerns, and you just laid out a really strong environmental case against the Keystone XL pipeline that I happen to agree with, although, like I said, in interest of full disclosure, that some of those studies are murky and it's hard to really figure out exactly what the true impacts of this pipeline will be with any great certainty given the interest involved. But do you have a problem at all with the minute that something pops up on the Republican radar and the environment is anywhere near it, that is automatically dead? It's like the environmental cost becomes a null and void point to the Republican Party at this. Does that bother you at all as a conservative person?
Yeah, it does. And I remember when I first started out, I said, these are principles of conservatism. And I went through, and straight from the Bible, I said, we have to be good stewards of the land. Therefore, you should be an environmentalist. You don't have to be left-wing, wacky environmentalist, right? You don't have to be Ed Fallon marching across over some imagined, problem coming up.
Although if we were, we would probably look as good as he does.
Yes, absolutely. He does look like he's walked 3,000 miles.
He does, and we could
use that. Yep,
walk a few thousand ourselves.
Well, I can drive 3,000 pretty easy.
I can drive 3,000.
Oh yeah,
I'm
easy.
really good at that.
But anyway, the bottom line is, as Christians and as conservative Christians, we should be stewards of the land. And what that means is if we're going to do something, it has to be something that we can control that isn't going to ruin other people's lives. And it should be for the betterment of our corporations and our people, create our jobs. And that's what should be important. It should be better for America.
And you know what? The same conservatives that are all for this XL pipeline, when they're talking about this off the air before Ed got out of here, the same conservatives that are talking about how great this XL pipeline are going to be the same people that are screaming for their constituents losing their property eminent domain if this goes through.
Yeah, and that, I forgot completely about that. That is something that you're absolutely right. Because this is eminent domain, and we've talked about.
I don't want to be irresponsible about it. There could be the company I'm sure is going to buy up a lot of this land.
Yes.
In a fair, in a negotiated dollar for dollar trade, but the potential for eminent domain, especially with Congress behind it, I think is a real problem. This is an issue. Liberals and conservatives get together on this one all the time. While I believe that there is a role for eminent domain, I think that it's abused by local and state officials. I believe the federal government has a problem with this too. And I think that anybody that wants to work, farm, ranch, or just leave it open as a preserve is going to have a huge problem if this pipeline is slated to come through their property.
Yeah, and that's just awful because you and I have talked about eminent domain. I think you and I are both on the same side of that.
Like I said,
for the most part.
Like I said, I think that there's a role for it, but I think it's been abused. It's been abused a lot.
Yeah, you bet. We're going to be back right after this break. We're going to talk a little bit about the shootings over in Pleasant Hill and the bomb threats and this new yik yak thing. Have you even heard of that?
I have not.
Have you heard of it, Maddie? Anyway, I guess that's the benefits of working with kids all day. We'll be back right after the break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I want to thank our sponsors, Betrosh & Associates, Lubinas Law Firm, Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Doc and Lefty. Also, we have a website, docandlefty.com, and Blake has actually done his biannual blog for the site. It's really pretty good. It's now his facts are all wrong, and his conclusions are stupid.
My facts but
everything else are okay.
100% perfect. I would have had one up today, but we lost internet at around 11 o'clock this morning, and only got it back 10 minutes before I got here.
We have to do a commercial.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. So, Maddie, you ready?
Betrosh & Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around here in the last segment of the show. I know that Doc, you've been itching to talk about this one, and I'm going to let you kind of take the lead on it, my friend, because while I was following it when it first happened, when you sent out the Facebook message about it, but my news coverage was limited because I am a .com sort of person, and my internet was down all day. So take it away.
All right. Well, here's what the entire, now I have inside information, and here's the reason why. Because I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist and I see kids that are in trouble. And what I know is there's this new application called Yik Yak. And it's kind of a combination of, I'd say Instagram and Twitter, but I don't know about any of them. But that's how it's been described to me. Except you can post things completely anonymously. Nobody knows. They hide the IP addresses. And the only way you can figure out where that IP address is coming from is if you call Yik Yak and go, hey. So last week, there was a couple of bomb threats over at Southeast Polk. And then there was just a general, well, there's been a threat. And so police presence was increased a little bit. Over the weekend, there was another threat. And people were like, hey, what's going on? We're trying to find this person that's doing stuff on Yik Yak. And of course, that threat was, well, something's going to happen on Monday. Well, sure as shooting, Monday morning rolls around about 6:30. This guy shoots at people and hits two of them. And they finally catch this guy. It turns out it doesn't have anything to do with Yik Yak. He's just a random guy going around shooting people. He's now in custody. The school is in complete lockdown. They canceled school for the day and everybody's home, and because they don't have enough police to cover all the schools in the area. That day, there's another threat out there, a threat that was not considered credible. And then again today, there was another threat. Here's what the problem is. Now you have all these threats, it's right before the holidays. The stress is ratcheting up, and these kids are using Yik Yak and other media to get out of having to go to school. Now, that doesn't make any sense. But the problem is teenagers don't make sense. All they see is, well, hold on, if I call in a bomb threat, then I don't have to take this test I haven't prepared for. Or, and that's how they think. The problem is, and this is my thing with the school, I understand you have to have a response. But especially in a shooter situation, I get that. But I'm going to say, don't go overboard. I understand you have to search all the bags. You should be doing that every day anyway. Right? That's just my opinion. If you have a school as large as Southeast Polk, you should be searching bags, making sure kids aren't bringing stuff to school anyway. But you also have to have a reasonable thing. I just had a kid not a week ago. He has, fingernail clippers, right? Sometimes they got a little file inside. Yeah, that's 3 days suspension. Now, it wasn't at Southeast Polk. It was a different school, but I'm like, hold on, how does that qualify as a 3-day suspension? So it seems like on the one hand, it's a very loose policy, and on the other hand, they really super enforce things that aren't going to hurt you. It's like the TSA going, well, you can't take nail clippers. Listen, I might be able to scratch you on the arm with my nail clippers, but that's about all. So that's what's been going on. So there's a whole lot of chaos going out at Southeast Polk, and that's very sad because this is also the same school that had all those suicides in a row several years ago.
Was there any information that the shooter had any connection to anybody at the school, wanted to hurt any kids? Nothing?
Nope, nothing. It's so far. You don't know. I mean, they're still gathering information. But what the police have said so far is really the two things were completely unrelated. that he didn't know anybody at the school, then wasn't associated at this point.
You just
So
happened to be by it.
Yeah, not even by it. He just happens to be in Altoona. The shooting didn't happen close to the school. the shooting happened. I forget the name of the streets, but it wasn't. It was in Pleasant Hill, and it wasn't necessarily close to Southeast Polk. I mean, keep in mind. I mean, here everything's close, right?
Right.
You know, the shooting happened
right.
within 5 miles of downtown Des Moines. Oh my God, that's close. But you know, if you know the areas around here, it's not very close at all. So
yeah, I don't. I mean.
So I guess the question is, do you think having increased gun laws would have prevented something like this? If we're going to make politics out of it, and that's what our show's about, let's do that. We got a couple of minutes
increased
left.
Gun laws, that's a pretty broad thing to say.
Well, you know, get the gun grabbers going.
Do I think that maybe having universal background checks could have prevented this guy, if he had mental health issues, from getting a hold of firearms? Yeah, I think so, and I think most of the country agrees with me.
Okay. Well, great. We got the politics part of it.
There you go. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it because...
you keep kicking my camera. I don't know why you do that.
I am kicking nothing.
Oh,
my
man,
feet are
I'm shaking.
That's not me.
I think you're purposely trying to undermine me.
You're so incensed. Well, there's that famous conservative...
I have my outrage stored up. I told you.
That famous conservative paranoia. I mean, shoot, at this point... I mean, you know my position on gun policy.
You bet.
And that's a well-worn path on this show. But I'm resigned to the reality that nothing will ever happen unless somebody in one of the political parties, like a majority of either political party, decides we've had enough. Democrats love guns just as much as Republicans do.
Yeah,
they just get more crap from the NRA about it.
Yeah. Well, let's all. I'm going to say, for those of us that do pray, let's pray for, you know, some guidance and common sense. And for those of us who don't, it's not going to kill you to get on your knees and pray for a little common sense and guidance on the other side. Now, I want to finish out the show with a little bit of a tribute to my Uncle Kenny. You know, my childhood was rather chaotic. And, you know, he provided a lot of stability for me. He offered me a lot of guidance in times of trouble. And he did that for a lot of kids. He had this skating rink in Ottumwa, Iowa, where everybody loved to come. At one point, he had a steakhouse, and he welcomed everybody. And he was just a great guy. He never swore, never drank, never smoked. Loved his wife. I mean, to the day he died. And this is passed on to his children, who have done very well. One of the funny things is I reconnected with my cousin Janet, and she's Helen Wheels in the Derby world. Honest to goodness, everybody that I know here in Derby land knows her. The outpouring of love for my Uncle Kenny is really amazing to watch on Facebook. And I might not make it through here without any tears, but he was really an incredible man, and I feel very grateful to have known him. And I wish his family well in this time of trouble. And I think that's it for the show. You doing anything for this weekend?
Nothing quite so as important as what you just shared with our listeners, but I got a gig coming up on Saturday at Ducktail and Clive. Other than that, just kind of we're going to keep doing our thing.
All right. Well, I think Lefty's going to be in the saddle next week by himself. I'm jetting out of town again, saving orphans and, you know, doing other things that I do. Thanks, everybody, tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of